Hey, it's Miguel Oja, host of Life on Circuit Radio, and as always, want to say thank you for giving us a part of your day. It's getting into the fall. Wonderful. I'm so tired of summer, so tired of that heat, and so even though we here in the ATL, we had some record highs this week, almost at 85 degrees in Atlanta, and almost at the end of October. So hopefully, we get ready to lose that. First time tuning into Life on Circuit Radio, what we do is we take subject matter off the headlines, we dig a little bit deeper into it. Today, we're going to focus on business, and the reason why I wanted to focus on business today is because the bottom line is with all the distractions which are going on in the world right now, the bottom line is if you're not making any money, you don't have a voice. The reason why, for some who will call him the Orange Cheeto, Donald Trump, has such a large voice is because he's for whatever you want to say, has been very successful in business. Why he's been successful in business, that's a whole nother conversation. It starts with money, and if you've been given a whole bunch of money to get started, a whole lot of us would be more successful if that happened. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about black women in business. We're going to talk about black media. We're going to talk about how black media and black business and black celebrities and influencers are influencing the general market. When you look at who's the biggest performer out there right now, it's Beyonce. You want to look at who is the biggest rappers out there now. You got to go to Kanye and Drake, and you got to go to Kendrick Lamar. If you want to talk about athletes, it's LeBron James. If you want to talk about politics of the last 8 years, it's 1 and 2 would be, and it's almost neck and neck would be Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And in the midst of all of that, you have this situation where this country seems very split. And so I want to talk from a perspective of business, but also how it has influenced our politics and our lives. But our guest today, I've had an opportunity to meet this young lady when I was living and working in Arkansas, and she was working for one of the largest African-American ad agencies in the country. And we worked on some campaigns together, and I was so impressed with her, and we had a lot of fun when we worked together, and we've been kind of talking offline. I said, finally, you just got to come on my podcast. Let's dig into this thing because you know a whole lot more about this big media stuff than I do. Welcome to the show, Daidria Grayson. Daidria, what's going on, sis?
Thank you so much. Hi, Miguel. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, I'm good. Just enjoying the ATL. I know you love in New York City, and so. But like I said, we've had a lot of offsite conversation. We worked together on a couple of projects, and and obviously, but I said, man, this is such the black media, black marketers, black influencers have become such a major part of what's driving commerce right now. And I think after years and years and years of it being suppressed, I think we're kind of at a place where there's a bit more respect in that space. But talk to us a little bit about your career in the advertising world, as well as through your relationships with the Walmarts and the Global Hues of the world.
Sure. So again, my name is Daidria Grayson, and I like to think of myself as a brand strategist or communication strategist. I have had the privilege of having 12 years in the advertising marketing space, where I have serviced clients such as the United States Navy, Ford Motor Company, McDonald's, Walmart, Coca-Cola, Lowe's, Home Improvement, Delta Airlines, and a couple of others that I'm failing to mention at the moment, giving my senior memory. I have worked on behalf of not just multicultural markets, which were African American, Hispanic, Latino, Asian American, and in some cases Middle Eastern as well when we're talking about regional marketing, but also total market, which is another word for pretty much everyone. Mm-hmm. So I've had the opportunity to pretty much work with the agencies and the brands to really dig a little deeper inside the consumer journey based on the goods or services we wanted to present for their consideration. And it was in that deep dive that pretty much we were able to see what makes each consumer base tick, but also understand who really wields the most influence. And Miguel, just like you said, that's where African Americans definitely have a huge part to play. We are the leaders. We are the trendsetters. We are the tastemakers. We are the ones that everyone else follows. And not in the sense of, follow the leader type way, but we have a unique perspective or approach to a lot of things. And that creates a lot of intrigue around our culture and who we are as people, despite all of the things that we've dealt with over the last 400 years. Mm-hmm. So it's something that, it's a fine line in terms of capitalizing on that, because, of course, everything is not to be monetized. Mm-hmm. But it's also something to be considered when you think about the consumption power of this particular group or our group. So that's what I've been working on for the past 12 years.
So, and we've seen, I would say it's been over, and it's been a little bit longer than 12 years. I think, it really in the mid 90s, I believe that the African American influencer really started to really take off. Definitely by the early 2000s. And now when you look at the ability of a Beyonce, or, just the whole title concept, and how, basically you have the biggest media, biggest stars in media who've all decided, okay, if you want to get access to our prime stuff, if you want to get access to our live events or the release of our new music, you need to come into our community. And now is because of Facebook and even going back as far as MySpace, now those communities seem like they're just so important to the overall developments of brands in 2016.
Well, yeah, and honestly, I would challenge that a bit and say it started even earlier than that. I mean, Beyonce is definitely the contemporary example of excellence alongside her husband, mm-hmm. Sean Jay-Z Carter. Mm-hmm. But before that, you had, in the early 90s, you had Prince, who was mm-hmm. fighting, directly with the record labels, exactly, to, mm-hmm. Not be seen as a slave and actually own his music, the mm-hmm. music that he created by himself, mm-hmm. And his masters. You had, earlier than that, even on the corporate side, that's not necessarily music specific, but you had, a slew of Black entrepreneurs that were coming into the restaurant game, mm-hmm. from a franchise standpoint, specifically McDonald's and Burger King, a lot of them who are still operating in that way and have mm-hmm. a lot of equity in the brand. Mm-hmm. We were really taking a step forward in a way that was unprecedented and really owning, our legacy, and our role in the culture. And so I think, looking at that, it can only get better. And so we see the titles, we see the Beyoncés, we see the Jay-Z's owning his masters. We see, as you and I talked about, we were chatting about on Facebook about De La Soul and them taking ownership mm-hmm. of their art and not waiting on Warner to distribute their music so that they don't get essentially, left behind in the royalty discussion. So it's a lot, that has been happening, that, again, reminds us who's really in control. And that would be, I think, the African-American community in a lot of ways.
And it's really, as you mentioned, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I look at what De La Soul, with the release of their album this past summer, what Chance the Rapper has done by not even being signed to a label and totally controlling his own levels of influence. Because when it boils down to record companies and the media companies, their primary benefit to an artist is the distribution, right? It's the marketing and distribution. And if you can handle that, then you're sitting in a catbird seat, right? Because I remember I'm a huge De La Soul fan. I'm a golden age hip hop guy, and but I'm also I'm almost exclusive, not almost. I am exclusively an Apple Music pretty much guy, right? And so I had this whole, I've got a lot of music prior to Apple Music and prior to all the syncing and all that, or whatever, the libraries. And I had all this music on my computer. And then all of a sudden, when I started to stream, my De La Soul was not available to me. I said, what is going on here? And then that's when I did my research, and I found out that basically their record company was, for the lack of a better term, this is prior to the article coming out earlier, 6 months ago. I said that their record company was basically holding their music hostage. But now, with the success of the last album, the Anonymous Nobody, I think is the name of the album, which was outstanding. All of a sudden now all their music is available on the Apple Music streaming, right? And so once again, they immediately showed their value. Chance the Rapper immediately showed their value, going all the way back to, why is his name, Baby and Lil Wayne's label that they're on, and the fact that they negotiated such a great deal with Universal back almost 20 years ago. But talk to us about this. I want to switch gears a little bit, because you know this probably as well or better than I do. No urban dictate. The issue that black media is still having with getting their fair share of the advertising dollar. Is that still an issue today as it was, say, 20 years ago?
Definitely. It's definitely still an issue. I think it's mainly because of the generational shift of the millennial, in the sense of we're definitely more multiracial. You know, there's definitely lines that blur between different segments of people. Not to say that there's not still Black and there's not still Hispanic and there's not still, you know, Asian American, but the mindset or the psyche, a lot of brands or a lot of people try to make it seem like that is one and the same. So it's much harder to justify the spend against a specific mindset or psyche in the eyes of brands or your Black media companies, which has been my challenge as well over the last 12 years. You know, because we're everywhere too, we as an African Americans, you know, like, oh, we could just buy, you know, NBC. It will catch everyone. Or we can just buy ABC. And thankfully there is programming that catches our attention, that captures our, you know, that our ratings, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But on the same token, it's not everything. So you still have to fight very hard if you're a BET or a TV one or a radio one or an interactive one to, you know, be part of the consideration set.
So at this point, and it's obviously BET has not been owned by African Americans in, I guess, 10 or 11 years when Bob Johnson sold it, and is now owned by Viacom. And see, my experiences go back to working in radio and, you know, and understanding those, and for people to understand what a non-urban dictate was, non-urban dictates basically mean that it's an ad agency term that obviously the ad agencies hated, but Black folks in the media, we kind of coined it. There were actual buys that would come down. We would get these, you know, the buys that would say, okay, we're looking for, you know, women 25, 54. We want this type of lifestyle. Here's the budget. And either sometimes it was the implied or it was directly put on the RFP, non-urban dictate, which means urban meant Black. We're not buying Black radio for this campaign. And the conversation always was around Black folks. We wash our bodies with soap, and we go to Office Depot and Office Max, and we do all the things everybody else does. But our Black media entities are suffering because we can't get those ad dollars. Now, here it is, fast forward 20 years later, 15, 20 years later, we're still having this conversation. Now, the MTVs of the world and VH1s, which never would play, you know, Black focused programs. Now, on a Monday night, you know, all you have is Black focused reality television, right? And so the Viacoms of the world, which owns VH1 and owns BET, you know, to me, why wouldn't they build up the franchise of those reality shows, which I can't stand half of them, but why wouldn't you drive that straight to the Black media in which you already have the audience? They said, no, I'm going to build up and expand the audience on the VH1 instead of a BET. Why do you believe that was the route that they took?
Well, I think there's a couple of things at stake there. First, I think because those networks, I'm speaking of the BET and TV1, which I know is much newer than BET, but, you know, there was immediate opposition in terms of giving those networks a fair share because the whole idea was you're speaking to a specific audience. But as you mentioned, over the years, and again, understanding the influence of African Americans, the flip side of that is that when you actually look at the numbers, or even on the radio side, when you look at urban stations from Clear Channel or Radio 1, it's not just African Americans.
Gotta listen.
I remember
That's right.
for McDonald's, when they looked at their audience, it was actually a majority general market and less African Americans, because we were on those other, you know, we were on SoundCloud, we were on, you know, XM, we were on what was then